All right, previously I talked about prejudice and aggression in the general unit about social relationships. Now we're going to move on to something that most people would consider more positive or pleasant to think about. We're going to talk about love. We're going to talk about love and attraction. And sometimes students will almost seem surprised or even disappointed, asking questions like, oh, can you really study love? Should scientists study love? That's one of those things that, it's just a beautiful thing that you shouldn't try to break down and subject to research. And, well, people have. The thing about love, definitions are important. You have to talk about what specifically do you mean when you talk about love. Are you talking about a specific component? Are you talking about love in general? One thing that researchers in this general area will focus on, they will focus on correlates or predictors of attraction. Who do you become attracted to? Who is potentially someone you might end up dating, or that they might be interested in you in that way too. And so these are predictors. None of them are guarantees. They just make attraction more likely, or you can't even say they make attraction more likely. They are correlated with attraction. Attraction is more likely when these factors are present. So there are three main factors that have been supported in research. One of them is proximity. Proximity has to do with like geographic closeness. Are you near to someone? If you are in a class where you sit next to somebody who perhaps you think is attractive, all right, well, the fact that you're sitting next to them makes attraction more likely. I mean, part of it is something we're going to talk about next, that you get the opportunity to meet them, but also people who live near each other, they're more likely to experience attraction and to potentially get together as romantic partners. Living together, working together, riding the same bus, riding the same shuttle from the parking lot on my campus. A lot of these things are aspects of proximity. We also have, some classic studies in the field where people in an apartment complex, they were closer to their neighbors who had apartments closer to them. So it's just these things of being close, being geographically close, that's one factor. Now, another factor is something we call mere exposure. All right, mere exposure. Think repeated exposure. Repeated opportunities to see this person, to get to know this person. Interpersonal attraction, it can be explained with repeated exposure. Repeated exposure to other people leads to feelings of attraction. Think about that. Have you ever met somebody and you just kind of like, okay, like maybe you didn't have strong feelings one way or the other, maybe you even disliked them at first, but you got familiar, you got exposed to them over and over and over again, you got used to them, and then the attraction develops. That could be because of this mere exposure. This could be that familiarity growing. And mere exposure is more likely when you have proximity to somebody. All right, now one other factor, the third factor that's been supported, and this one's a biggie. I mean, there's definite evidence to support similarity. Similarity is a predictor of attraction. Now, you might have heard the expression opposites attract. Rarely. Much more often, people who are similar are attracted to each other. Similarity can include lots of things. It can include similarity in level of physical attractiveness, similarity in demographics, like where you're from, what your religion is, similarity in terms of what you like, what your interests are, what your politics are, what your personal values are. Lots of things go into your similarity. Typically, you're not going to be attracted to someone who's exactly the same as you. Not only would that be difficult, it might be annoying if they are a spot-on copy or clone of you. But people who are attracted to each other, they tend to have similarity. And a common reason that people give for breaking up is lack of similarity, lack of common interest, or lack of similarity of some sort. So a similarity does seem to be an important factor in predicting attraction. Now, another big area of research to bring up here is some folks have tried to identify different types of love. One big name in this field is Sternberg, and Sternberg gave us the triangular theory of love. It's called different things in different books. I'm making sure that I'm calling it the right thing. Yeah, so the triangular theory of love, it focuses on three characteristics of a relationship. or a potential relationship. And those are commitment, passion, and intimacy. So what are these things? Commitment is sort of practical stuff, like, is that your boyfriend? Is that your girlfriend? Is that your husband or your wife? Have you committed to them? Have you entered into an arrangement to be in a relationship with them? This is the sort of the less romantic aspect here. This is just like, have you committed to that person? Because, sometimes you're doing stuff that's involving romance and attraction and love, like relationship stuff, but you may not be committed to a person. You might just be going on some dates. You might just have a crush on them. Now, you also have passion. I always think passion starts with a P, so does physical. Physical attraction, physical arousal, physiological arousal. If you have passion for somebody, they get you excited in those ways. This involves those what we might call the lustful excitement aspects of attraction or a crush or a relationship, which is different than our third aspect, and that's intimacy. And that intimacy, sometimes people use intimacy to mean like physical intimacy. Here we are talking about emotional intimacy. I like to say, intimacy starts with an I, which is a vowel. Emotion starts with an E, another vowel. That's the best I can come up with. If you can come up with better, please let me know. But intimacy, think emotional connection, emotional bonding, trust. All right, the person that you want to have a conversation with. Passion is more like the person that, maybe you want to do some physical stuff with. Intimacy is that person that you can talk for hours, that, that couple that they finish each other's sentences, they're probably pretty high in intimacy. The people you tell your secrets to, those are people you have intimacy with. If you have a couple where they have secrets, where they don't tell each other everything, that's a sign of lower intimacy. And you can have a mixture of these three things and lead to different types of love. If you have all three, and this is very rare, but if you were lucky enough to have all three, you've got commitment and passion and intimacy, you would have consummate love. That's like your highest level of love. That's rare though. Usually you have one or the other. Like maybe you've got passion and intimacy, but you're not officially dating, or maybe you are married and you've got intimacy, but you don't have passion. Maybe it was there, but it's not there anymore as you get older, but you still value that person because that's your best friend. That's the person that knows you best because you've got intimacy. All right, so be familiar with those three components. And again, if this interests you, we cover this in more detail in the separate class just about social psychology.